Hello and welcome to the Trista channel, and today I'll be talking about time travel. Time travel is the concept of movement between certain points in time, analogous to movement between different points in space by an object or a person, typically with the use of a hypothetical device known as a time machine. Time travel is a widely recognized concept in philosophy and fiction, particularly science fiction, and now quantum physics. The idea of a time machine was popularized by H.G. Wells in 1895's novel The Time Machine. It is uncertain if time travel to the past is physically possible. Forward time travel, outside the usual sense of the perception of time, is an extensively observed phenomenon and well understood within the framework of special relativity and general relativity. However, making one body advance or delay more than a few milliseconds compared to another body is not feasible with current technology. As for backward time travel, it is possible to find solutions in general relativity that allow for it, such as a rotating black hole. Pardon me. Travelling to an arbitrary point in space-time has very limited support in theoretical physics and is usually connected only with quantum mechanics or wormholes. Some ancient myths depict a character skipping forward in time. In Hindu mythology, the Mahabharata mentions the story of King Rabiata Kadumi, who travels to heaven to meet the creator Brahma and is surprised to learn that when he returns to earth that many ages have passed. The Buddhist Pali Canon mentions the relativity of time. The Pawasi Sutta tells of one of the Buddha's chief disciples, Kurama Kapasa, who explains to the skeptic Payasai that time in the heavens passes differently on earth. The Japanese tale of the Urashima Taro, the first described in the Mayosho, tells of a young fisherman named Urashima Noko, who visits an undersea palace. After 3 days, he returns home to his village to find himself 300 years into the future, where he has been forgotten, his house is in ruins, and his family has died. In Jewish tradition, the 1st century BC scholar Honai Halga Magan is said to have fallen asleep and slept for 70 years. When waking up, he returned home but found none of the people he knew, and no one believed his claims of who he was. Shift to science fiction. Early science fiction stories features characters who sleep for years and awaken in a changed society, or are transported to the past through supernatural means. Among them, the year 2440, A Dream If Ever There Was One, 1770 by Louis Sebastian Mercer, Rip Van Winkle, 1819 by Washington Irving, Looking Backward, 1888 by Edward Bellamy, and When the Sleeper Awakes, 1899 by H.G. Wells. Prolonged sleep, like the later, more familiar Time Machine, is used as a means of time travel in these stories. The earliest work about backwards time travel is uncertain. The Chinese novel supplement to Journey to the West, circa 1640, by Dong Yui, features magical mirrors and jade gateways that connect various points in time. Protagonist Sun travels back in time to the world of the ancients to retrieve a magical bell, and then travels forward to the world of the future to find an emperor who has been exiled in time. However, the time travel takes place inside an illusory dream world created by the villain to entrap and distract him. Samuel Madden's Memoirs of the 20th Century, written in 1733, is a series of letters from British ambassadors in 1997 and 1998 to diplomats in the past, conveying the political and religious conditions of the future. Because the narrator receives these letters from his guardian angel, Paul Acklon suggests in his book Origins of Futuristic Fiction that the first time traveller in English literature is a guardian angel. Maiden does not explain how the angel obtains these documents, but Alcon asserts that Maiden deserves recognition as the first to toy with the rich idea of time travel in the form of an artifact sent backward from the future to be discovered in the present. In the science fiction anthology Far Boundaries in 1951, editor August Derleth claims that an early short story about a time travel is missing one's coach, an anachronism written for the Dublin Literary Magazine by an anonymous author in 1838. While the narrator waits under a tree for a coach to take him out of Newcastle upon Tyne, he is transported back in time over 1,000 years. He encounters the Venerable Bede in a monastery and explains to him the developments of the coming centuries. However, the story never makes it clear whether these events are real or a dream. Another early work about time travel is The Forebears of Kallimeros, Alexander, son of Philippe of Macedon, by Alexander Veltman, published in 1836. Mr. and Mrs. Feswick dance in a vision shown to Scrooge by the Ghost of Christmas Past, Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, 1843. Has early depictions of mystical time travel in both directions, as the protagonist, Ebenezer Scrooge, is transported to Christmas past and future. Other stories employ the same template, where a character naturally goes to sleep and upon waking up finds themselves in a different time. A clearer example of backward time travel is found in the popular 1861 book Paris Before Men by the French botanist and genealogist Pierre Boutard, published posthumously. In this story, the protagonist is transported to the prehistoric past by the magic of a lame demon, where he encounters a plesiosaur and an ape-like ancestor and is able to interact with ancient creatures. Edward Everett Hale's Hands Off, 1881, tells a story of an unnamed being, possibly the soul of a person who has recently died, who interferes with an ancient Egyptian history by preventing Joseph's enslavement. This may have been the first story to feature an alternate history created as a result of time travel. Excuse me. Early Time Machines, one of the first stories to feature time travel by means of an actual machine, is The Clock That Went Backward by Edward Page Mitchell, which appeared in the New York Sun in 1881. However, the mechanism borders on fantasy. An unusual clock, when wound, runs backwards and transports people nearby back in time. The author does not explain the origin or properties of the clock. Enrique Gaspar, 1887, may have been the first story to feature a vessel engineered to travel through time. Andrew Sawyer has commented about the story. Does it seem to be the first literary description of a time machine noted so far? Adding that Edward Page Mitchell's story, The Clock That Went Backward, 1881, is usually described as the first time machine story, but I'm not sure that a clock quite counts. Pardon me. H.G. Wells' The Time Machine, 1895, popularised the concept of time travel by mechanical means. And now the science. Now, the thing about time travel in quantum mechanics is, for example, more like, say, the recent film Avengers Endgame than the Time Machine, Terminator, or Back to the Future. For example, your life and time is on what is referred to as a world line or lifeline, which is like a straight flowing line which does form into a cone at one end, consisting of branches of choices you didn't make or possibly could have made. But we'll concentrate on the main line in this explanation. Now, like Endgame, for example, you won't get paradoxes, you won't be able to change the past like you could in other concepts. When you travel back in time, because you're moving forward, or bending your world line, as it were, in a forward direction, if you were to travel back in time, because you're going forward, it counts as travelling into the future, in a manner of speaking. So, for example, If you went back in time and killed Hitler, then returned back to the present, nothing would change because it's an event that happens in your future. However, this can cause a branch reality or timeline which you can only experience if you stayed within that time you went back and changed it. So to know what a world would be like without Hitler, you'd need to stay in that time and live it out to see what happens. Same as if you went back and killed your ancestor. This means ideas like Back to the Future and Terminator and H.G. Wells are wrong. For example, in Back to the Future 2, the Doc and Marty won't experience or go into the branch reality that Biff created. They would have to have been with him and stayed in that altered 1955 to see its fruition. With Terminator, there would be branch realities and not the prime timeline affected. Also meaning killing John Connor won't work and stopping Judgment Day would also not work. And also, the idea that aliens are us from the future to stop climate change, they can't change the prime timeline, they can only create an alternate one. And thus, of course, we ourselves are living in that alternate timeline. However, even though we'll benefit, they won't, albeit they may be aware of this if any of this is true. Also, H.G. Wells, if he saves his wife, it will create an alternative timeline. This is also illustrated in Endgame, when they couldn't stop Thanos but could use the stones from the past to undo the damage in the present, but not the event itself, and also why they had to return the stones to stop the multiple branch realities in the past due to them being taken. The new Star Trek films get it right, just like Endgame. For example, despite the actions of Nero and Spock, these events cause an alternate timeline which doesn't affect the prime timeline, hence why in the Picard series the timeline has not changed. Romulus is still destroyed and Spock is still registered missing. However, this is still dangerous though, because even though you could go back in time and steal some gold, for example, which won't register missing in your timeline, this will create a branch reality elsewhere. Oh, pardon me. This concept is also known as the river flows concept. Also, however, the means of time travel is also easier said than done. For example, you can't use a machine like H.G. Wells or Doc Brown, because what you have to consider is that planets aren't stationary. If you stayed on the spot and travelled back in time, the Earth won't be there, and so you'd be floating in space. There are some interesting other means that have been theorised of methods of time travel that you could use. Here's just a few. The infinite cylinder, an idea promoted by astronomer Frank Tipler. This mechanism would allow very advanced civilizations to travel through time. For the cylinder to work, you would need matter that is roughly 10 times the sun's mass. Then you will need to roll this matter into a very long and very dense cylinder. This super dense cylinder would be a bit like a black hole that has passed through a spaghetti factory. So you can imagine that the technology that would be needed to create this density. The key to this device is its spin. Tipler argued that a cylinder might produce closed time-like curves if the rotation rate were fast enough, at least a few billion revolutions per minute. Once the cylinder is rotating fast enough, a spaceship nearby, if it follows a precise spiral around the cylinder, could possibly travel billions of years into the past and several galaxies away. However, Stephen Hawking proved that time travel would not work with a finite cylinder unless you have negative energy, rather unlikely. But there is hope. It would be possible if the cylinder is infinitely long. Basically, you need to essentially create a black hole in the shape of a cylinder. You need to make this supermassive, super dense object rotate 1 billion times a second. It needs to be infinitely long, so saying that this is a theory is going to be a little hard to put into practice. It's a bit of an understatement. Plus the costs. Another possibility would be move a ship rapidly around a black hole, travelling near the speed of light. Because black holes are so massive, they warp space-time. As such, time passes more slowly for those who are near a black hole. Scientists estimated that individuals could feasibly get close enough so that time is cut in half. 10 years for the universe would be 5 years for the time traveller. According to Hawking, around and around they go, experiencing just half the time of everyone far away from the black hole. The ship and its crew would be travelling through time. Imagine they circled the black hole for 5 of their years. 10 would pass elsewhere. When they got home, everyone on Earth would have aged 5 years more than they had. So I was trying to start Stephen Hawking. So it's not exactly a huge transition, but you could slow time down a bit. Basically, you need to travel around the speed of light. You need to actually get to the black hole, the closest of which is light years away, which would take generations to reach. So like the other example, this is rather beyond our grasp for the moment. Obviously, if you had a ship like Star Trek and you found a black hole, you know what I mean? Cosmic strings is another idea proposed by Tom Kimball. In the 1970s, another theory for potential time travelers involves something called cosmic streams. These hypothetical one-dimensional narrow tubes of energy that are stretched across the entire length of the ever-expanding universe. Ultimately, the cosmic streams are believed to be left over from the early cosmos, and they are predicted to contain huge amounts of mass. Since they contain so much mass, they could warp the space-time around them. It is expected that at least one string per Hubble volume is formed. A Hubble volume is a spherical region surrounding an observer beyond which objects recede from the observer at a rate greater than the speed of light due to the expansion of the universe. Moreover, cosmic strings are either infinite or they're in loops with no ends. Scientists say that the approach of two strings parallel to each other would bend space-time so vigorously and in such a particular configuration that might make time travel possible. Again, basically very few cosmic strings. There might be just 1 or 2 in the entire observable universe, which has a 93 billion light-year diameter. These 2 strings would need to be rather close together, a rather unlikely scenario, which is a shame. Well, there's everyone's favourite, the time machine. Time machine research often involves bending space-time so far that timelines turn back on themselves to form a loop, technically known as a closed time-like curve. To accomplish this, the time machines are thought to need an exotic form of matter with so-called negative energy density. Such exotic matter has bizarre properties, including moving in the opposite direction of normal matter when pushed. Such matter could theoretically exist, but if it did, it might be present only in quantities too small for the construction of time machines. However, time travel researchers suggest that time machines are possible without exotic matter. The work begins with a donut-shaped like hole enveloped within a sphere of normal matter. Inside this donut-shaped object, space-time could get bent upon itself using focused gravitational fields. To go back in time, a traveller would race around inside the donut, going further back into the past, which each lap. Kind of like the particle accelerator in Flash. So basically, for a time machine to work, we need to find lots of exotic matter, which we're not even sure exist, or a lot of running around the inside of a donut-like object. Like Star Labs, when the Flash does the thing. However, the science is constantly changing and new things are constantly being discovered. so who knows? Or unless you're a speedster who can run fast enough to create tachyons and wormholes, or access the quantum realm like Ant-Man and the Avengers. Interesting. Anyway, that's all for today on time travel. If you like this video, hit the like, and if you haven't, then please show support by subscribing and hit the bell notification so you don't miss out on any updates or uploads. Until next time, folks, take care, be well.